Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third installment of the SBN Male Ally Educational Webinar Series. My name is Rachel Speir. You might remember me from session one. Really excited to talk about this topic, looking to the future. Again, this is near and dear to my heart, and to many, many others out there, such as the panelists that are joining us today. So why don't I have you, ladies and gentlemen, actually introduce yourselves right now. Dana, start us off.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm really excited to be here. Hi, you guys. My name is Dana Wilke. I'm a co-founder of the Jessi Combs Foundation. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower the next generation of trailblazers in Jessi's honor. Before that time, I've been in motorsport my whole life. I grew up in motorsport before the foundation. I worked for Harley Davidson, for the Harley Davidson brand, an iconic little motorcycle brand you guys might have heard of. Spent a few years in retail. I was there for 15 years, a few years in retail, a few years in Europe, partnership marketing, product relations, worked on the West Coast for a while in the field team for the top performing sales side of the organization in the West market. Had 82 mainline stores in my territory. And then in 2019, I resigned to focus on the foundation. So I think I'm here today for a variety of those reasons. And I really look forward to this important topic. I think this is all really an important conversation, and I commend SEMA and the SEMA Business Network for opening this dialogue. This is pretty exciting. Seth?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Seth Metzger. My position right now is the Senior Vice President of Electrification at Dana. I've been with the company for around 21 years. Dana, that's the same company that makes all the world-class axles and drive shafts for Jeeps and trucks and all the fun vehicles that we all enjoy around the world. As with most people that are affiliated with SEMA, I am an automotive enthusiast. I love everything that's Jeeps and everything that's air off-road. I'm also very proud to say that I have 4 daughters who one day will be entering the workforce. And that's one of the reasons I'm very glad to be here to discuss this important topic.
Thank you, Seth. Matt?
I guess that leaves me, last but not least. Matt Reisner, I'm with Real Truck. I've been with Real Truck for going on 13 years now. For those of you unfamiliar with the brand, we're the largest automotive aftermarket retailer, but we also have 28 manufacturing brands. I happen to work on the manufacturing side of things. So much like Seth, I'm an avid enthusiast off-roader. I got a Jeep. I enjoy taking it all over the country, Utah, Colorado, going wheeling. So I use a lot of Seth's products on my vehicle. So, but much like him as well, I've got a daughter. So this is near and dear to my heart. In fact, she actually has entered the workforce, and I'm constantly talking with her about ways to navigate the hierarchy and just kind of bouncing ideas off each other. So this is a very important topic to me as well. So glad to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists, so much for introducing yourselves. I'm very lucky to know and have worked with all of you. So this is going to be a fun topic for all of us to discuss. So since most of you seem to have had some experience, I really want to also put out there that this is a conversation. First and foremost, we are here to talk about creating a better future for our industry, the industry that we all love so much. So we will be sharing our experiences, knowledge, and stories of people working with people with actionable ideas and that enable and support the inclusion, just inclusion in your workforce. There's no one solution that can be applied to everyone or everything. Let's just put that out there. So what we want to do is continue this conversation of what is working so we can focus and grow that so we can always continue to move forward. So with that, the few people here who have not seen the previous ones, why don't we go to the next slide, Mandy? And there we go. So this is just a quick recap of what session 1 was about. A male ally supports gender equity. We all know that there's other biases and stuff like that. Right now, we're focused on just the gender bias, but it's recognizing it, maybe understanding that some ways that you were thinking or talking or acting there was an unconscious bias, and starting to recognize that's step one. And then taking the intentional actions to create the environment where everyone has an equitable opportunity to succeed. That's how we all win. When everybody has the opportunity to succeed. Step two, a male ally inspires others to act as well, whether it's education or leading by example. It's going beyond just helping and being there for one person. It's having that person next to you also become an ally as well. And then the third one is a sponsorship of another. Actions without real meaning behind them or resources behind them, it can just be looked at as just, I don't want to say false, but it's a purposeful effort to actually create a lasting change, something that will be repeated, something that will be felt and create a new way of thinking and mindset in the workplace. So that was session one. So session two was all about the personal experiences of the panelists and why they're an ally, and really creating what is that mindset that allowed them to just make it second nature for them. So shifting the perception of what it means. Sometimes we all get a little caught up on what it means, but it's really something that all of us have to participate in. Educating, creating that mindset of acceptance, of appreciation for everybody's talents and aptitudes is really important. Deciding to take action. Again, there's a big difference between saying you're an ally and doing the things that mean that you're an ally. And it comes all from a personal reason, as Seth, Dana, and Matt all explained. They have daughters. Dana was very close with Jessi, who was an ally to her. So find that personal reason, and then take action on it. Make others inspired by why you're doing this. And then making it second nature. It doesn't have to be something that is forced. It doesn't have to be something that is some grand gesture. It can be the smallest word, question, action, but those, once they just keep going and going and going, it becomes second nature. So that's when these things, the ally mindset really starts to take hold, and a whole new process and culture and can start being established. So that was a little bit about session two and what the panelists in session two shared. So I'm going to go now to the next slide. Now, we want to talk to you about, looking to the future and how it can really be applied. So we're going to talk to you with little nuggets and stories about how to implement some of this stuff. So Dana, I know you and I had talked a lot. It's all about starting the conversation. So why don't you take it off from here and kind of give us your thoughts and experiences?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. When I think about the word ally, whether or not male or female is in front of that word, just ally. We're in a male-dominated industry, and whether or not, we want to talk about it, I think that this is a challenge for people. This is a challenge. And so how do we short circuit this and make sharing wisdom, sharing knowledge, with each other at any level, just the norm as opposed to the exception. And I think I'd like to think back. I think we can all remember that one person. Think about that one person, that whether it was your dad or whether it was a guy at work or a coworker, that one person that slowed down to help you out, that stood up for you in a meeting, that said, hang on a minute, I think Dana's got something to say and she can't quite get the word in, in this scrum that's going on. Dana, what is it that you wanted to say? Like, that to me is that ally mindset. And I think within companies, it's a culture, and some companies, it's going to need to be a culture shift, because that may not be the way that it is today. And so just starting the conversation, and when I say that, I mean, it can happen at any level of company. It doesn't have to be a huge corporation. It's, a Fortune 500 company like Harley Davidson, down to, a shop, a small local shop that, the general manager opens this dialogue in their weekly huddle and says, hang on a minute, this topic's coming up in the industry. How are we doing with this? Is this something that's needed? Is it, and when you open that dialogue, you've got to be ready for the response. And I know
think sorry.
Go ahead. No, please.
I was just gonna say, I think you touched upon something where even the smallest thing, such as, hey, I think, Dana had something to say, like even that, it's a second nature sort of thing, but, saying it and doing, so I think you touched upon definitely the first bullet point too, where it's just, like you said, starting it, just
right.
something.
And starting it in your, like, we don't have all the answers. I think you said at the beginning, Rachel, this isn't like we're all handing everyone a playbook and saying, here's the playbook for how to be an ally. Good luck. It's like, I think we back out of that for a second. And even if a manager brings this up in their weekly huddle, that's starting the conversation. And we don't have to have all the answers, I think. And that's part of it. And we're not going to solve it all today, but opening up and asking those questions, I think, is really important, and fostering an environment of respect and asking ourselves, do we do that right now today? And we may or may not, but just talking about it is the first part.
Yeah. Matt, I know you and I had just had recently talked about, how something as small as, whether it was just a text message or a phone call or something like that. I mean, do you want to add to what Dana was talking about just now?
Sure. This industry is, it offers a lot of opportunities to network for starters, and a lot of the people of the opposite sex that I consider to be allies, I met through the networking opportunities and have developed relationships with them throughout the years. And to the point that you made earlier, it could be as simple as a text. I mean, we bounce ideas off of each other all the time. I will say it's a two-way street. I've gotten as much out of this relationship with my female counterparts as they've gotten from me, if not more. I'm often reaching out to them as well and looking for perspective. So it's not just a matter of what can I do for them, that they help me as well. I mean, it's all about professional development and enrichment and helping each other succeed. I mean, at the end of the day, it's people helping people. Once we break down the barriers of I'm a male, you're a female, that kind of thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just trying to do business and succeed and advance your careers. And, that's what really it comes down to at its core.
I mean, yeah, and I know, Seth, you and I have done a lot of stuff together out at Moab and things like that. I think that's always something that I've always admired too about what you do. Having the position that you're in too, you're on the more technical side of things. So you understand and appreciate the asking questions and learning, kind of what Matt was just talking about, really learning about what's needed out there. And I mean, the whole process. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what started the conversation.
And I guess I've got a bit of I've got a kind of a longer answer and a shorter answer to the question or the topic. First off, I think, there's a good demographic. I love the question that turned it to be ageist, but trying to understand the folks that are going to be on this. There's different perspectives or different ways of approaching this question, I think, between, small companies and big companies, but then there's some similarities as well. So first off, large companies, like Dana, most of them already have a forum for discussion because they have some sort of a diversity, equity, inclusion initiative in place. These initiatives, they were formed by boards or driven by boards or top management for business benefits. And the reason behind that was because of a lot of studies that were done that show that for all ill-defined tasks, they're best handled with a lot of diversity. So a lot of the things that you deal with as management are these broad tasks, and that's why they're driving it. That's one reason that people might get behind an activity like this. For the best companies, like Dana, the shameless plug there, they drive these initiatives for more meaningful reasons. They could be a moral obligation to your community. I mean, you think about the communities with which we work and live. We want our employees to have that same demographic, that same makeup. For us to motivate ourselves to work with those individuals and them working with us, we have to value it. We have to treat others with respect and celebrate that diversity. We have to make sure that when we're growing, it's done in a way that we act with integrity and respecting all of the individuals. So for a company like Dana, that we've got some well ingrained DEI initiatives already in place, having these types of discussions, whether it's at the top level, mid-level, bottom level, is relatively easy. We all have the same vernacular. When new persons join the organization, there's already surrounded by a community of people that share these values, and having that discussion, whether whether it's about any topic, it's generally open door and very easy to do so. That's kind of the longer answer. The shorter answer that I think goes across big companies and small companies alike, that whether an initiative exists or not, I think finding what motivates your team or leaders is important. I don't think there's a correct answer for this. It could be business results. It could be directed from the board. Others, it could be moral obligation. Others, it could be more personal reasons that we all shared and we all just kind of talked about. We all have a personal reason we want to be here and we want to talk about this. So I think finding that thing that's important to the leaders to engage that discussion, I think that's probably the most important. That works across all size companies.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, there was an example when I was working essentially as a brand ambassador for, actually, I think it was Dana Aftermarket, at Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. And I remember there was a gentleman who was waiting to talk to another one of the guys that was there. And, I kept asking him, hey, do you need help? Do you need help? Oh, I'm just going to wait. I'm like, okay. It turned out that I was actually the one that had the information that he needed, not, and it was just nice to have, one of my fellow Dana workers and Dana guys there said, oh no, she's the girl, those are the little things that I think, the simplest statement in action. I mean, I know for me, it made me feel great that they knew that I had their back and I had that capability, as well as, just a simple statement like, hey, Rachel, what do you think about this? Is this going to work? Bringing in the female perspective. I know Dana, we talked about this the other day, like, the simplest statement in action, for whether it's for you or for even one of the scholarship girls that the Jessi Combs Foundation works with. You had a story about that, and I think was, it's just, bringing in that technician. She was definitely somebody that, they took a chance on her, but it was something that, I don't want to even say a chance. It was like, it's something you just saw beyond.
Well, by bringing in different talent and different diversity, as we call it corporately, but really bringing in diverse mindsets, it elevated the whole shop space. I mean, it made, because of her work ethic and the way that she worked, the shop saw women differently, but then it elevated their work ethic, and they knew they had to raise the bar in some ways, and that's good for the bottom line. And it's, it made people treat people differently. It doesn't solve everything in life. And it's pretty tough sometimes to be a girl in the shop like that. A lot of times, to be really honest and blunt about it, but you have to work twice as hard sometimes to just do your job. But to have someone that's willing to bring you in and give you a shot, like, that's the mindset that I think we all need. And I think, just to put that out there too, it starts at the top, and by the top, I mean, either the general manager, depending on if you're at retail or in the boardroom, but this mindset cascades down, and that culture is created from the top down. And that can be, because it can be challenging for an entry level or mid-level employee. I speak for all sides of it. And so just knowing that if you're a manager here on this webinar, or wherever you are in your career path, you can make a difference on your team, even if it's not at the very top. But if you have some influence over a team, you can start today and have that, and make that, kind of shift that culture, which is good for retention, which is good for all those things that we all know are really big business challenges right now.
Well, I mean, the customer base for all these products is diverse. It's not just one group. So having a diverse team and mindset actually helps to speak better to that diverse customer base too. But, it's getting those managers, getting your peers, talking to them to create that personal connection. I mean, I know Seth and Matt, even the review process, that's I would think a great opportunity where you can say, hey, how do you feel this is going? And then, building that at least trust. Would you say that that would be the right word? I mean,
Yeah, I think trust is probably a good word, but also displaying that you have an open door. You're open to sharing anything, and hearing, providing feedback, and receiving feedback as well in order to improve and be a better ally.
I mean, it's in starting the conversation with you, Matt, within Real Truck, I know you say you've talked about, the whole open door policy and informal conversation. I mean, you'd have that town hall, just right now. I mean, I know there's plenty of opportunities for conversation. What have you found is a good way to start a conversation with somebody, whether it's asking them about things or education, whatever?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, just asking them about what's going on, that's usually the easiest way to start that conversation up. From a corporate perspective, much like Seth had mentioned, we handle a lot of the big picture items, corporately. We've got plans in place, the full HR department that puts their programs together. But, just on a direct level, I try to personally make an effort to get additional perspective on things that I'm working on. And, with that open door policy, just bouncing ideas off of folks, I want them to do the same, and get an outsider perspective that's different from mine, really, just to make sure that I'm covering all my bases, that I'm looking at it from all the right angles, and that I'm not missing something that might affect, whatever it is that I'm working on, either adversely or positively. So the big thing, though, is if you are going to have an open door policy and let somebody come in there, you damn sure better act on it. Nothing's worse than claiming to have an open door policy or claiming to be, I'm here to listen, I'm here to help you out, and then you do absolutely nothing with what information's been shared with you. So that's a good way to lose that trust factor, and it's also it can be detrimental in the long run to that relationship as a whole. So make sure that you act if you do have that open door policy and get that information from somebody.
And you actually bring up a perfect segue to go to the next slide. Just to note, I mean, it all comes back to individual actions. What can we do? How can we think about things that will inspire somebody else to maybe think the same way? And that's kind of what I want our viewers to take away from this. What are the concepts? What are some little nuggets or ideas that maybe you can take and apply back to your workplace environment or even your own personal life? I mean, this doesn't have to be just a workplace thing. In fact, it shouldn't be. There's plenty of times, again, outside of the office opportunities where maybe somebody, said something or did something, really kind of understanding and standing up for somebody, being there. Okay, so this is definitely something that we all know, and we're not perfect, but we wanted to call these out because it's at least something, at least knowing that they're there, we can hopefully avoid them. So Seth, why don't you lead us off with your experiences and knowledge on this topic?
Sure thing, Rachel. And I'd actually, I'd like to cite some research that's been done on this. Fortunately, this is a topic that's quite important in the industry. So there has been a lot of research from social scientists trying to get some data on, are programs effective? One such study was done. There was an article done, and I think it was a Harvard Business Review article called "Why Did Diversity Programs Fail?" So pretty aptly appropriate here for this topic. The social scientists, I think they looked at something like 3 decades worth of data, some 800 or so different firms, and looked at what was the impact of various initiatives 5 years out after they've been implemented, to try to understand what actually drives an impact or what doesn't. And I think the results were quite interesting. There were 3 big takeaways on kind of things not to do. The first was mandatory diversity training. This one's quite interesting. I think what was identified was a lot of the courses bring awareness through a lot of these really simple, easy to understand do's and don'ts. But mixed in those presentations and in those trainings were a lot of negative messages that really aren't the best in terms of change management or social change management, getting people to change. I think that the simple fact is it led to a lot of kind of blaming and shaming. And for those of you that have kids, that doesn't work with anybody. And for those of you that are 40 some years old, that doesn't work with you either. I can speak from experience. So those types of methodologies, a mandatory program, not the best tool. Job tests. Job tests, incredibly well intended. It's a way of trying to systematize the hiring of individuals to try to remove bias. You do a test, you get a result. You're either up here or down here, and you pick the best candidate. I guess what's been found is that there's a lot of inherent bias, either in the tests, in the questions, or just in the grading thereof them. So overall, they were not found to be very, very effective. That doesn't mean that you can't write a perfect test that is free of all bias and all concern, but just in general of the research done, these were not the most effective tools. And then finally, grievance systems. Grievance systems mostly were found to be ineffective because cases of discrimination, a lot of it can still be a taboo subject. Not all companies have the same open door policy and actually represent it. So a lot of times, if you have grievance systems, they're just not used quite effectively as the way you would intend them. So I think the data in the article, I think, was quite interesting. It's not indicative of everyone's program. Programs can be written around these things to make them more effective, but it was just a general observation that seems rather appropriate.
That's spot on. That's really helpful. Yeah, I've read many of the same assessments and things like that, and it's really quite interesting to see how people react like something that you think might work might not. So thank you, Seth, so much for sharing that. I know, Matt, we excuse me, we talked about, we've talked, and I've seen you do it, making uneducated decisions, the whole making a decision in a bubble thing, as you were talking to earlier too. You bring in people with different perspectives. So why don't you give us a little bit of talk about that and why that is not a good way to go.
Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on the last slide and kind of segued into this a little early, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you only have one perspective, and that's your own. As much as you try to open your mind up and everything else, it's physically impossible to see anything else or anything in life through anybody else's eyes but your own. That's the only perspective that you have. So the only way to bring in additional perspective is to ping other people, get their ideas, because I will never know what it's like to be a woman. I can certainly empathize. I can hear stories from friends, but ultimately I will never know what it's like to be a woman because I am not. So, getting ideas and input from additional people definitely sheds perspective on things and prevents you from making an uneducated decision. Oftentimes as type A personalities, as many of us are that are in the sales and marketing field, we think we know what's best. And we rush in like the Kool-Aid man and, this is what we're doing. This is the decision I'm making because I know my stuff and I'm not wrong. And oftentimes we are wrong. because we look at it from a different angle. But again, back to my previous statement, you're only looking at it through your own eyes, because that's all we know. So, if you're not pinging other people, not bringing other people into the fold, not getting other perspectives, it can cause missteps, definitely.
And Seth, you actually had shared something, shared an article with me that had talked about where, mentorship programs, which kind of, I know, gets a little bit into our next slide, but, expecting people to reach out or step up or whatever. I think it said that it wasn't, that success, you can't expect people to just do that. And I know you guys at Dana have a program. I think you guys have some mentorship programs over there. Can you talk to us a little bit about, expecting people to speak up versus actually, how that program works?
I'd be glad to. So, I mean, mentoring is a fantastic tool. In fact, it's one of the best tools out there. It helps, teach a protege the ropes, and get them experience. You teach them, certain things that will then make you an advocate for life. You want them to be successful. And then on the other hand, the person doing the mentoring learns a lot. It's just from common interaction, meeting a common goal helps chip away at bias and so on. So it's great for the mentor and the mentee. Setting up the programs can be complicated. It may be more natural for a male to talk to another male about, well, can we set up a mentoring shift? It may be a little bit less natural for a male to approach a female, or the other way around. So using using the HR community to help set up and help pair mentors and mentees can help break down some of those barriers. And in some cases that's needed, just because we do have I guess a disproportionate number of males in the organizations than females. As you get more females, that barrier will reduce over time, and I think the conversations will be more natural. But the programs to help out from say the HR community, for example, they're very helpful to get things started.
Awesome. Dana, you and I have talked for hours about really making it where we need to focus on like these opportunities, and I think you can speak as well to, expecting people to speak up. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. Can you give us a little bit about, your experience of what hasn't worked, or ways to avoid things that maybe aren't working in situations?
Yeah, I have had experiences where, and this is the challenge of this dialogue, I think, and where it lives within an organization. Does it live in human resources? Does it live in the culture and somewhere in the mindset? Like, that's a difficult part to answer in some ways, because I've seen and experienced when some of these things live, in HR, and people are led to feel comfortable, and only to kind of, run into experiences where they weren't supported, or they weren't, and that can happen in any situation. But that's why I think this is a real challenge, is that we're talking about it because it hasn't been solved yet. It hasn't been solved with a check the box HR initiative quite yet. Like, we're on the path and on the journey, but we need to do more. So what is the more? And I don't have all those answers, but I think back to some of Matt's points about, I think of great leaders and the leaders that I've worked for. Great leaders know what they know, and they also know what they don't know. And so they surround themselves with people that can create diversity of perspective. But I'm careful to figure out where this might live. And that's why, it's hard to shift a culture, right? The very fabric of the way something operates and the mindset of humans is a really challenging thing to shift. But I go back to like the simple examples of remembering that one person. I remember the first boss I had that created a trusting environment, and it happened to be a female, and she happened to be the best in the entire country at what she did. But she also was the first boss I had that created this environment of trust and diversity and the different skill sets that she brought in. And that resulted in the best company results as well. But it started with the human factor. And, I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget how she treated me and how she treated the men and women on her team. So I think about that in my leadership role as a consultant, like how do I treat people and how do I emulate that? So how do we all do that? How do we all take that one person, that one experience, and either share the story like I just did and share it with your team and say, hey, there was a shop class teacher that stood up for me when everybody else was making fun of me, and it gave me the confidence to push through, and now I'm the best technician in the field. That one guy or gal, like, how do we all emulate that mindset is what I think about.
And I think you're touching upon a really important topic too, where it was, one person and one person's actions, and, down the road, now you're in that role of leadership and you're going to be that boss for the next group of people. So really focus, because we can't control anybody else's actions. Right. So controlling our own actions and the way that we approach things. But at the same time, if that's the company, it was in session 2, if that's the company culture, is that really your dream job? Because it's not a culture of inclusion that appreciates who you are and allows you to succeed. That was, I don't know, that just reminded me of that part in session 2. And I think, Seth, you lead by example there as well. I've seen, you working with your teams. It's not, hey, we need to do this because, stockholder shares or something, but you have that personal connection, and so I think it's making sure that you can talk to it. I don't need to.
I know, and it's kind of getting into the next topic a bit, but whether you're a first level manager with like a couple of reports or someone that has a few hundred or a few thousand people reporting to you, if this is something you care about, you discuss it with your team. You can be that one person to create an initiative and get things going. You don't need to have, something, a tried and true DEI initiative. You don't need top management to do this. It's up to you. You could do it in your own department and start making progress, make a meaningful impact. And all your other peers are going to be looking at you saying, how the hell did you do this? Mm-hmm. And, you've already driven a lot of, very successful team, happy team, and everyone's working together. And it can drive a very positive impact.
With that, I know that it's a good segue to our next slide. So Mandy, why don't you go to the next slide real fast? We're already 45 minutes in. Wow. So yes, we've kind of touched upon a lot of this stuff on the last slide, but Dana, why don't you lead us off by leading by example? I know we've talked a lot about that, and also with some of the female-led projects, which I think Seth can join in on too. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences on engagement and mindset?
Thanks, Rachel. I think about the work that I do with the foundation and how, we bring in these scholarship recipients every year. These women are like heroes to us. And I think about how do we create an environment that's worthy of this hero generation and these women that are like at the top of their class that are, and then they get into the world and it's like, kind of like, whoa, what's going on in here? And so how do we work together to create an environment that's worthy of these women? And I think about that every day and in my past experience, because it isn't that yet. But I think about some of the things that did change and help me over time in my career. And one of the things is focusing on people's strengths. And that can apply, again, to a shop space, to a corporate environment, but really strengths focused training, and giving people language to be able to say, all right, let's focus on finding the best people for the job and giving people a chance, knowing what their proficiencies are. And, using programs like whether it's Gallup strengths training or Myers-Briggs or the DISC profile, there's all manner of these types of things, but it can really change. It changed my career path, and it gave me language to talk about the things that I'm great at and my skill sets without feeling like you're bragging or something. And then you can almost use it as a matchmaking opportunity within your teams and your cultures to say, hey, this person's great at, operations and XYZ. and this person's great at the communication side of things. If we match them up, that's a sales team dream right there. Or, that's just one example. And so really that focusing on people's strengths was a huge kind of breakthrough from what I experienced on a team, and feeling valued, feeling like it stripped the kind of the parts that some of the things out of it and made it more just a conversation. And a lot of that was led by male managers that I had at the time. So strengths focused training, female led projects, that's another thing. We're in a male dominated industry. That's a fact. We all know that. So like, how do we elevate females into, leveraging their skill sets to lead these projects that are high profile and that really set people's mindsets apart and change perceptions in that. I think of Jessi, and her work with Dana as a spokesperson. I think of my friend Bogey, who works with Volvo to do this really cool all female led build that company has propped up and shown, and that changes people's minds, and those decisions are made by men to be open to those projects. So that's allyship in a way. I think of the welding company manufacturer that listened to Jessi and and as a voice of the consumer, to bring the first line of female welding gear to market. Like a panel of males had to say, you know what, we're going to listen to this woman who has credibility and authenticity and give her a shot. So I think of those things.
Nice. Yeah. And actually you bring up the Myers-Briggs and all that stuff. We actually have a question by Tyson saying, do any of the panelists know of other companies that use emotional intelligence assessments for onboarding? If so, can you share this experience? And is there value synergy to supporting the culture and reinforcement of the ally mindset?
I can answer that. Because it's something that I've been on the receiving side of at a Fortune 500 company, but then also have helped companies implement at 50 to 100 employees, where the DISC profile is what they chose at the time, but we leverage that as a tool for onboarding, so that person can know their skills and what they bring to the table and have that language. And then the rest of the organization, it shortens the cycle of onboarding in a way, because it's like, oh, this is what this person has and vice versa. And it gives people a head start. And that coming from the culture of the general manager as something that's important across the board, also created an environment of respect and trust right off the bat. So, which leads to retention, which leads to those other things we're all chipping away at. So yeah, that's my experience with it in a dealer group anyway.
Seth, why don't you share a little bit of your experience about whether it's open door policy, team building exercises, the volunteer diversity task force meetings. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on and experience.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the task force. First off, I run parts of a business that are all over the place. We've got people in the US, people in Canada, people in Europe and India, China, all over the place, all over the world. And the nice thing about diversity task force is you can engage your managers. They can engage their teams. These are very, very effective, particularly if they're voluntary, because it's not a forced type activity. It's something that they're engaging with their teams. Typically, people would volunteer for it, and they work on their own unique problems. You can imagine somebody that may be in a sales organization is trying to work on diversity-related challenges compared to somebody that may be in an engineering organization. The problems that they have could be very, very different. So it allows them to come up with some of their own unique solutions to those, which in their own way can be very effective. They can be empowering, and generally leads to a better result. So we've had a lot of success with those types of things. We're setting up, recognizing that everyone that has an issue, they may have a different solution to it, and implementing those across the world.
Matt, you had already talked about that open door policy and making sure that, if you're going to do it, do it. But I mean, I'd love to hear, again, your thoughts and experiences and knowledge on how you yourself engage, or how you've seen some of your team members and people at Real Truck engage in this mindset too.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of already touched on it a little bit, but I mean, again, with the open door policy, the big thing is building that trust factor. I mean, if somebody's coming in to discuss something with you, you know, keep in mind that especially if it's a member of the opposite sex, that trust factor might already be lacking somewhat. So they're taking a big step by even coming to you and bringing something to the table. And, you know, again, that's why you got to be sure to follow through with it, you know, to reinforce that trust and make sure that you're helping them get results. That just goes a long way in the long run in making sure that, you know, that to foster that relationship moving forward. You know, I've got people of the opposite sex that I've worked with at my company, and we kind of developed that relationship. And now after they've left, we continue to have that relationship. Christina Bowen is one, some of y'all may know her. You know, she worked at Trans and now she worked at Real Truck, and now she's outside of Real Truck. But, you know, she and I developed that relationship when she worked for us, and both of us bounced ideas off of each other, you know, brought problems to each other to help each other work through. And we still do now, both professionally and personally. And I do consider both a professional ally, but also a true friend. But that all started with, you know, the icebreaker, basically, you know, one of us just breaking the ice and doing that entry level conversation and building from there. So it's really a pattern of just establishing that trust and letting that person know that you have their back and they have yours.
Nice. Seth, you had sent me an article, and it struck me. It was about soldiers in World War II, talking about how working side by side, basically any bias left because it was just them working for a common goal. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. So another research kind of driven thing where some social scientists went back and looked at how did people's view of, you know, different different demographics, people from different backgrounds, how do they view each other both before and after going through certain circumstances. In this case, it was soldiers working together. They had a common goal. They were working together, obviously, for the war. And through contact, through them actually working together closely, they found out that preconceived notions that they had, they weren't exactly right. Those things get chipped away a bit over time. And, you know, and that's one of the key things with like mentorship. With mentorship, I think I mentioned it previously, both the mentee and the mentor, they benefit from this because they're not just getting, you know, taught the ropes or trained or so on, but they're actually working together. So, you know, if you are as a volunteer, you know, volunteer to mentor someone, a woman that's trying to come up in her career, you will also help work on your own biases and generally improve. So we see that, you know, wartime as well as in everyday business life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys have covered so much of this, and there's so many nuggets to take out of everything. But again, I think it comes back to what all I've heard you guys say is it's kind of that individual thought or decision to listen or to think of something differently or to take an action. So I appreciate that. Mandy, why don't we go to almost the final slide? Because this is all about, is it working? Yeah, you know, obviously that's the big question. Is it working? And I'm just gonna have you guys, you know, give me your thoughts on. I mean, this is kind of what has been determined, you know, through our calls and stuff like that. But Dana, why don't I start with you and you know, kind of assessing, you know, how do you assess it's working?
Well, I think the middle one, be patient, is a good one, because none of this, you can't change a culture overnight. And we're talking about this because it's important and it's a challenge, and acknowledging that there's a challenge and a problem, I guess you could put it, not to be negative, but, you know, an opportunity for improvement. And so be patient. Just by having the dialogue is part of the work. So having, you know, asking the questions, being open is the beginning. Like opening your mind is the beginning. Just by being on this webinar is progress, I think. So like, be patient with yourselves and kind to yourselves and others, but like know that that mindset shift it takes time, and I know we're all like someone said, type A, we want business results. We need the end of the quarter. We need the end of we all are used to that hamster wheel. But when it comes to culture and the way we treat people, that's a heart-centered leadership type thing. And that authenticity and that mindset has to come from the heart, I think, in some ways, to lead with heart. And so be patient and give yourself the space to process it and your teams and be on, open to the journey.
Seth, why don't you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, just to pitch in. You can follow the data here pretty easy. I think it's, this is something that you can look at past history for, did you have a diverse team? Did you have a lot of women on your team? And track it, now, and track it in the months going forward. Are you actually making an impact? Are you changing the structure of your team to look like the way you're trying to get to? So I think this is something that it can be also very philosophical, but it can also be driven with hard data. And if you don't, just to echo the don't get discouraged thing, tactics rarely work without one cycle or two of learning. That's the nice thing about this. You can learn fast. If it doesn't work, it's fine. Move on to another tactic and keep trying until you get, you really get what you want. What works for somebody else's team may not work for you. The nice thing is, once you start making progress on something like this, it is a reinforcing behavior. As you get more women on your team, they're in more leadership positions, they're mentoring more people, they're going to recruiting events or bringing on more people, and you will see a snowball effect where you're going to bring in more women to your team and improve your diversity.
Matt, it's all on you.
I get to bring it home. Huh?
Bring it home. Yeah.
Is it working? I mean, to Dana's earlier point, the fact that we're having this conversation that's a big yes to me. It is working. I mean, I think about the early conversations that you and I had, Rachel, and Randall as well, when we were kind of framing up this program. And it's like, okay, there's a need out there, but is this thing going to get legs? Are there going to be enough people that feel comfortable chiming in and joining in and sharing their perspectives? And I mean, here we are on our second session. We've got some repeat attendees as well as some new ones. Good engagement. So I would say, yes, it is working. I mean, again, not to beat that drum, but the second circle there is the most important one. Be patient. I mean, this is going to be a full-on culture change for most of us, for most companies and for the industry in general. And, that's not going to happen overnight. It's not as quick as just flipping a switch. And you and I spoke on this earlier today, Rachel. If it does happen fast like that, run away. Turn the opposite direction and run away, because it is not going to be successful. It is a dumpster fire waiting to happen. So the natural, thoughtful progression of things like we are doing here is absolutely the right approach and the right way to do things. So,
and I'm going to go back to what Seth said as well, is it takes learning. You're not necessarily going to get it right the first time, but that goes back to the first circle, which is observe, ask, engage, review, continuously find out if your people are feeling like it's working. And if not, okay, maybe there's something else, like what you're saying. So, but yeah, in the end, again, another article, multiple articles out there about if it is working, eventually team performance and retention, it goes up, the sales go up, because as we stated earlier, the customer base is diverse. So if you're able to think in different ways, like it's going to make the people at your companies happier. They're going to feel more inspired to speak up and speak out and come up with new ideas. So, which I guess take me to the last slide, Amanda. Kind of brings me to the next wonderful statement. We've had these 3 sessions and it's been absolutely incredible. So what we've talked about is some ways that you can implement, the mindset and how to change your own actions, which maybe will change somebody else's actions, and it can just grow from there. But that's what our next session 4 is going to be about in February, is keep the conversation growing, not just going. We want to keep it growing. So how do we get more people coming on to these webinars to watch it, or sharing the link of these webinars even after it's done being live? We need to make sure that, you know, more and more people are starting to hear and understand and help us start the conversation. We are being here shows that you're an ally, shows that you have that mindset. So yeah, really excited that session 4 will be in February 20th, 2024, about keeping the conversation growing. But before we hop off, I wanted to put out there, does anybody have any other questions or comments for the panelists that you wanted me to share?
No, Rachel, just wanted to thank you for having us. Appreciate being part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'll say the same. I think this is really, it's important. It says something that SEMA and that the SEMA Business Network is, that this topic is a topic that they're willing to open the dialogue on. That in itself says something, I think, about the importance of it, and for the industry and for our industry's growth. So let's keep talking.
Well, I think, yeah, there was one last one, just as I know I found it very educational hearing like, especially, you know, Dana, you're now working with like the foundation, so it's a lot smaller, obviously, than Harley-Davidson. But I really appreciate Matt and Seth, like your ideas that can be scaled up or scaled down. I think, you know, the mentorship, there's so many ways that we can implement just ideas and actions. So love to know if you guys watching thought it was helpful too. So mark it on your calendars. February 20th, 24 is session 4 of this series. Very, very, very appreciative to our panelists for their time, their experience, everything that you guys have given today. So bravo. I will. Hey, I like that.
Hey, right answer.
Thank you. Sweet. Well, have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Panelists, thank you so much again for your time. SEMA, thank you for hosting this and allowing us to have these very important conversations. Appreciate you, and see you all in February.